On a Wednesday morning in October, my doorbell rang at 6:45. I was still in my dressing gown. I had not yet made tea. The sun had barely decided to come up. I opened the door and found 3 children standing on my front step. Callum was 7. He was holding his sister Maya's hand, she was 5, and he had a backpack on that was slightly too big for him, and he was standing very straight, the way children stand when they have been told to be brave and are trying extremely hard to do exactly that. Maya was clutching a stuffed rabbit with one ear missing. She was not crying. She had the careful blank face of a child who has already cried everything out. Baby Theo was asleep in a car seat on the doorstep. He was 14 months old. There was a note tucked under the handle of the car seat. The note was from my son Danny. It said, "Mum, I can't do this. Please look after them. I'm sorry." 8 words. For 3 children. My name is Francis. I am 69 years old. I raised those 3 children for 5 years. And when Danny came back wanting them returned, with a new wife, a new house, a new life, he found out very quickly that some things, once given, cannot be taken back. I need to tell you about the woman who opened that door. I am Frances Joan Mercer. I was a district nurse for 33 years. I have seen the full spectrum of what human beings are capable of, the remarkable kindness and the remarkable cruelty and everything in between. I am not easily shocked. I am not easily broken. But I am a mother. And when you are a mother, you are always, underneath everything else, a mother. Even at 64 years old in a dressing gown at 6:45 in the morning, you are a mother first. Danny was my only child. I had him at 25, raised him alone after his father left when Danny was 3, worked nights and mornings and weekends to give him what I couldn't easily afford. I was not a perfect mother. I worked too much. I was tired too often. I missed things I shouldn't have missed. But I loved him. Completely. Without condition. Danny had married a woman named Steph when he was 26. Steph was bright and funny and struggled with things she found it hard to name, anxiety, I thought, or perhaps depression, though she never sought help and Danny never insisted. They had 3 children in 4 years, Callum, Maya, and Theo, and the marriage slowly cracked under the weight of financial pressure and Steph's deteriorating mental health and Danny's increasing inability to stay when things became difficult. Steph had a breakdown when Theo was 11 months old. She went into hospital. Danny lasted 3 weeks as the sole parent of 3 children under 8 before he drove to my house at 6:45 on a Wednesday morning, left them on the doorstep, and disappeared. He did not tell me where he was going. He did not call for 3 weeks. He did not call Steph's hospital either, I checked. I stood on my front step in my dressing gown with 3 children, one asleep in a car seat, one holding a rabbit, one standing very straight trying to be brave, and I made a decision in about 4 seconds. I picked up Theo's car seat. I held out my hand to Callum. I said, "Come inside. I'm making porridge." Callum took my hand. Maya followed. We went inside. That was 5 years ago. I want to tell you what those 5 years looked like because I think people imagine it was a sacrifice and I need to correct that impression. It was hard. Harder than I have words for. I was 64 years old and I was raising a 7-year-old, a 5-year-old and a 14-month-old baby with a district nurse's pension and whatever Danny's child benefit amounted to, which I fought through the proper channels to have redirected to me, which took 4 months and a solicitor and more phone calls than I care to remember. I was exhausted in a way I had forgotten was possible since Danny himself was small. I did the school runs and the packed lunches and the parents' evenings and the nightmare wakings and the chicken pox that went through all 3 of them in sequence and the broken arm Callum got falling out of the oak tree in my garden that I had told him 17 times not to climb. I did the tears. The tantrums. The long, slow, patient work of helping 3 traumatized children understand that they were safe. That they were loved. That the leaving was not their fault, never their fault, and that the people who were supposed to stay had failed them and not the other way around. Callum took the longest. He was old enough to understand what had happened and young enough to feel it as pure abandonment. He stopped speaking much for about 3 months. He would sit at the kitchen table after school doing his homework in complete silence, and I would sit nearby doing something quiet so he didn't feel alone, and slowly, over weeks and then months, he started talking again. Small things at first. Then bigger things. One evening about 8 months in, Callum looked up from his homework and said, "Nan, do you think Dad is coming back?" I said, "I don't know, love. But I'm not going anywhere. That's the only thing I can promise, and I promise it completely." He nodded. He went back to his homework. He reached over and put his hand on mine for a moment, a gesture so adult in a 9-year-old that it took everything I had not to cry. But it was also, and I need to say this clearly, the best 5 years of my life. I know how that sounds. I know it is complicated. But those children gave me a reason to get up every morning that was so urgent and so necessary that there was no room left for the quiet loneliness that had been my life before that doorbell rang. Theo called me Mum by the time he was 2. He had never known another word for me. Maya started calling me Mum when she was 6, one morning at breakfast, very casually, as if she had decided and that was that. Callum held out the longest. He called me Nan until he was 10, and then one day, driving home from football, he said thanks, Mum, and neither of us mentioned it, and it has been Mum ever since. I did not correct any of them. They knew who they were. They knew their father's name. I never said a harsh word about Danny to those children, not one, ever, in 5 years. They would form their own opinions when the time came. My job was to make sure they were safe and loved while they did. He called on a Tuesday evening in March. I knew the number, I had never deleted it, though he had not used it in 4 years and 8 months. 4 years and 8 months of silence, broken on a Tuesday evening while I was helping Theo with his reading. I stepped into the hallway to answer. Danny said, "Mum." "It's me." I said, "I know." He said he was well. He said he had sorted himself out, therapy, a new job, a woman named Claire he had married 8 months ago. He said Claire was wonderful with children. He said they had a house now, a proper house, with a garden and good schools nearby. He said he was ready. I let him talk. Then I said, "Ready for what, Danny?" He said, "To be their dad again. To have them home. To be a proper family." I sat down on the hallway stairs. I said, "Danny. Callum is 12. Maya is 10. Theo is 6. Theo calls me Mum. He has called me Mum for 4 years. Do you understand what you're asking?" A silence. He said, "I know it won't be easy. But they're my children, Mum. They need their father." I said, "They needed their father 5 years ago. They needed him 4 years ago. They needed him 3 years ago. Where was their father then?" Another silence. Longer. He said, "I was broken, Mum. I couldn't." I said, "I know you were broken. I also know that I was 64 years old and I wasn't broken, and I showed up. Every single day. Without a note. Without 8 words of explanation. Just showed up." He said, "Please, Mum." I said, "This is not my decision alone. These children have voices. They will be heard. That is all I will say tonight." I ended the call. I sat on the hallway stairs for a long time. Then Theo came looking for me because we hadn't finished his reading, and he stood in the hallway in his dinosaur pajamas looking at me with eyes that have no idea they belong to someone who is about to have the ground shift under them. I said, "Come here." He climbed into my lap, all 6 years and considerable weight of him, and I held him and he didn't ask what was wrong and I didn't explain and we sat there on the hallway stairs until he fell asleep. I hired a solicitor named Margaret the next morning. Margaret was 61, had been practicing family law for 30 years and had what I can only describe as a magnificent fury on behalf of children that she kept perfectly controlled beneath a professional exterior. She was exactly what I needed. She explained the legal landscape clearly. I had been the children's primary carer for 5 years. I had applied for and received special guardianship 2 years earlier, a step my previous solicitor had strongly recommended and that I had initially resisted because it felt like closing a door I wasn't sure should be closed. I was glad now that I had listened. The guardianship meant Danny could not simply remove the children. Any change to their living arrangements required a court process. And in that process, the children's own wishes, particularly Callum's and Maya's, who were old enough for their views to carry significant weight, would be heard. I sat each child down separately. I told them the truth, calmly and without my feelings in the way of their right to have their own. I told them their father had called. That he wanted to be part of their lives. That they had every right to feel whatever they felt about that, anger, hope, confusion, nothing at all, and that no feeling was wrong. Callum listened without expression. Then he said, "Does he know my football position?" I said I didn't know. He said, "Does he know I'm afraid of moths?" He said, "Does he know Maya only eats pasta if it's the small shapes not the big ones?" He said, "Does he know Theo still needs the landing light on?" I said, "No. He doesn't know those things." Callum said, "You know all of those things." I said, "Yes. I do." He said, "Then I know what I want to tell the court." Maya said she wanted to meet Danny first before she decided anything. That seemed to me like wisdom beyond her 10 years and I told her so. Theo said, "Is Daddy the man in the photo?" The one photograph of Danny I kept in the album I had shown them honestly and without commentary. "Is he nice?" I said, "He was always able to be nice. I hope he's learned to stay." Theo considered this. Then he said, "Can I have my dinner now?" 6-year-olds are remarkably good at priorities. Clapperboard ACT 5, the court, Justice, 3 minutes. The court process took 4 months. Danny and Claire attended every session. Claire was, and I observed her carefully because it mattered, genuinely trying. She was not performing. She was nervous and earnest and clearly loved Danny in a way that made me think he had done something right in choosing her even if he had done everything else wrong. Danny heard Callum's statement. He heard what his 12-year-old son said to a family court, about football positions and moths and pasta shapes and landing lights. About the 5 years of ordinary daily knowledge that constitutes actually knowing a person. I was told later that Danny wept during Callum's statement. The court's decision was carefully considered and humane. The children would remain in my primary care. Francis, me, remained their guardian. Danny was granted regular contact, every other weekend, holidays to be negotiated, increasing over time as relationships were built slowly and honestly. The judge said something in her ruling that Margaret wrote down and gave to me afterward on a piece of paper that I have kept. She said, "The children's stability, their emotional security, and their profound attachment to their grandmother represent a foundation that this court will not disrupt. Love expressed consistently over time outweighs love declared after absence. Mrs. Mercer has shown, through 5 years of daily action, what parental commitment looks like. Love expressed consistently over time." I read that sentence every time I need reminding of why it was worth it. It has been 18 months since the court ruling. Danny and the children have built something. It is not what he lost, you cannot rebuild 5 years in 18 months, but it is real and it is growing. Callum goes to Danny's every other weekend. He came back from the last visit having learned to change a car tire, which apparently Danny taught him in the driveway and which Callum described in considerable detail at the dinner table as if it were the most important knowledge a 12-year-old could possess. Maya has decided she likes Claire. She announced this one evening as a simple fact with no elaboration, and I accepted it the same way. Theo still calls me Mum. He met Danny 3 months after the ruling, in my garden, on a Saturday afternoon, very carefully arranged by Margaret and a family counselor. Theo shook Danny's hand very formally because Callum had told him to. Then he showed Danny his dinosaur collection for 45 minutes. Danny listened to every word. I watched from the kitchen window. I thought about the doorstep, the car seat, the 8 words. I thought about 5 years of porridge and packed lunches and landing lights and football positions and moss and small pasta shapes and the particular weight of a 6-year-old falling asleep on you in a hallway. I thought, all of it was worth it. Every single morning of it. Callum came and stood beside me at the window. He said, "You okay, Mum?" I said, "More than okay." He put his arm around my shoulders. This 12-year-old boy who once stood very straight on a doorstep trying to be brave, and we watched his little brother show his father the dinosaurs. I want to say something about the word grandmother. People use it as if it means something smaller than mother. As if the grand in front of it is a qualifier that reduces rather than expands. As if love filtered through a generation is somehow less urgent, less real, less fierce. I want to tell you that there is nothing less fierce about it. I want to tell you that the woman who opens the door at 6:45 in the morning in her dressing gown and picks up the car seat and holds out her hand and says, "Come inside, I'm making porridge," that woman is not lesser. She is not a substitute. She is not a temporary measure. She is the one who showed up. And showing up every morning, without a note, without 8 words of explanation, just showing up, is the whole thing. It is the whole entire thing. To every grandmother watching this who is raising children that were not supposed to be yours to raise. You are not a backup plan. You are not a last resort. You are the one they will remember. You are the landing light left on. You are the small pasta shapes. You are the hand held on the doorstep. You are enough. You have always been more than enough. If Francis and the children moved you, please give this video a like and subscribe. We share powerful stories every single day. Share this with every grandmother you know who is raising grandchildren. This story is for her. And tell me in the comments, what would you have said to Danny when he called? What would you have done at that doorstep? I want every word.